speaker. I am very excited to talk with this group of academic professionals that are committed to creating opportunities for those within communities to access a college education. So I do have a slide deck that I've prepared with a few slides to sort of serve as a blueprint for how to sort of guide our conversation. There will be plenty of time for Q&A. Janine has promised me that she's going to watch the chat and make sure that all questions are answered. And then I'm hoping that we can at the end have a really vibrant discussion, because while I'm here to share our model, I also want to hear from you and examine some best practices that may be happening in other pockets and things that we might think about as we deploy our work here. So with that, I am going to share my screen, and this worked earlier, so we will hope that it works again now. All right, is everybody able to see my screen okay?
You are in good shape.
All right, wonderful. So again, I want to thank you for having me this morning. I am Diamante Walker. I have the privileged honor of serving as the CEO of the Pittsburgh Scholar House, which is an affiliate of the Family Scholar House in Louisville, Kentucky, which has built a transformational model for parenting students in the Kentucky area. And they've been refining that model over the last 20 years. And we have been able to secure affiliate status. And while we are a standalone nonprofit, we work with them and use their guiding principles to implement our program here in the region. We started as a subsidiary of the Pittsburgh Council on Higher Education and have since spun off and established our own core mission, which I'm going to share with you as our why. We essentially partner with highly motivated parents and their children to do what we call igniting a positive cycle of generational prosperity. We often talk about breaking the cycle of generational poverty, but once we've broken the cycle of poverty, what happens next? And so we focus on what happens next. We invest in families and their futures to create economic mobility. And we do this through providing equitable access to higher education opportunities, economic empowerment, with a deep emphasis on the social and emotional learning needs, not only for the children, but for the parents as well. And so again, as I said, we are a two-generational model. We were started by the Pittsburgh Council on Higher Education in April 2022. And the last year has focused on how to build this community of highly motivated parents that are earning a 2-year and 4-year degree, and how to assemble supports that help them to foster a sense of community and belonging. And the goal is to ensure that they have the support that they need to earn the degree while they're raising healthy and happy children. And so I'm going to point you to the photo there, because that is Mr. Asa Otey, who was lovingly termed as the deputy mayor of PSH. We had a camera crew come out and talk to myself, the team, and some families a couple of months ago, and Asa was just in love with the camera, and he's in love with the mission, and we love him right back. So I do have a video that I typically show, but I'm not going to show it today because I want to leave ample time for our discussion, but I will make the link available to you as a follow-up. So if you'd like to see the video, it gives you a snapshot to the folks who create all the magic behind the Pittsburgh Scholar House, which are my other colleagues and teammates. We are a staff of 6, and that video was taken to kind of give a highlight of the work that we do. I'm going to start out with a few facts about parenting students. I'm sure this is not, this may be widely known within, this particular community of practice. But when we are thinking about college students who are parents, roughly 22 to 25% of college students have a parenting responsibility. They have dependent children, meaning children under the age of 18. They're likely to attend community college, and they are more likely to be students of color versus white students, and are typically older than non-parents. One of the things I want to highlight on this slide is the number of student parents that experience pervasive mental health issues and have limited access to transportation, childcare, and other basic services and basic needs that are necessary for anybody to be successful while earning a college degree. more or less somebody who is responsible for raising children. And so there's a lot that keeps me up at night, but this is the one statistic that sort of wakes me up in the morning. According to the IWP, it was found that in 2016, if you look at poverty amongst all single mothers, that could have declined by more than 3 times that we've seen in the last decade if one in 4 of those mothers had earned some level of with a high school education, had earned some college or a college degree. What this tells me is that the problems that we're seeing with relation to poverty being experienced by single mothers in particular is fixable and solvable. So my goal is to think about how could PSH reimagine what a systems level response, not a programmatic response, but a systems level response, what could that do and how could that address this need? So I'm going to share a little bit about how we are approaching this, not only programmatically, but also by thinking about the systemic level issues that contribute to these, concerning statistics. So again, we've talked about this. Single mothers make up about 25% of 25% of college students are single parents, and 76% of those student parents are likely women. And the interesting thing about this is that mothers are uniquely motivated to pursue a higher educational degree because they want a better life for their children. And so that is sort of the area that we tap into, that motivation to make change across generations. If we look at the economic impact of education for single mothers, the completion of an associate's degree can increase earnings by more than $300,000, and they are 38% less likely to live in poverty. So we're not even looking at the 4-year degree at this point, but we also know that the children are 90% less likely to live in poverty if they are raised by a parent who has a college degree that has resulted in a high priority occupation, such as nursing, finance, or something like that. Looking at the degree attainment rate for this particular population, 8% of single mothers who start a college degree earn it within 6 years. That's an abysmal statistic, and the Scholar House model is designed to increase the completion rate for single parents, particularly single mothers. Default rates for unsupported parents and students are typically higher. I'm sure you see this in many of your institutions. 52% of these parents drop out before earning their degree. And the priority issues that have been identified as housing insecurity, lack of affordable childcare, and transportation. And so that's some quantitative data that we've looked at to start our work, but it was also important for us to understand qualitatively the experiences of parenting scholars. So before we did our program launch, the first thing we did was facilitate a focus group and to listen to the needs of either single mothers who were enrolled in a degree program, had at some point started a degree program and had to stop, or had not ever had the opportunity to start a college degree. And this is a lot of what they shared with us. And I know this is a busy slide, but I am happy to share this slide that at the culmination of our convening today so that you can take a look at this. But it supports what we see from a quantitative standpoint: the lack of reliable childcare, the lack of reliable transportation, an untenable housing situation. And the cost of tuition has really been a fear factor for many parents considering going back to school. They do not want to go into debt. And, there's not always a clear ROI of what that college education will yield for them. And so we do a lot of mindset work to make the case as to why a college degree is important, strategies to make it more affordable, and for them to understand what it's going to mean for future generations over the long haul if they are able to make that investment. And so that sort of pre-programmatic stand helped us to define and develop what has become a flagship program within the Scholar House network that was created by the Pittsburgh Scholar House, which is called the Wayfinders Program. And I will talk about that a bit more in a moment. What I want to do before I start to talk about our model is to sort of harken back to the framework through which this work is being done. So we are not pulling anecdote from the sky. We are working from an established playbook by the Aspen Institute Network, of which we are a member. And within that playbook called Tapping the Talent of Student Parents, there are 5 practice areas that are recommended if you want to create some sort of programmatic model to address the educational needs of this particular population. And they're called promising practices. And so that first promising practice is to identify, collect, and analyze data, which you've seen a little bit of that here at the beginning of this presentation, so that you know who you're supporting and how to support them. The next promising practice is to create those partnerships and to recognize parent expertise as essential to the model that you're building. So I'll talk a little bit about our parent advisory committee that was developed within our program and the difference that's made and how effective we've been. The other promising practice, this is all about messaging and communication and giving this community a sense of inclusion and being welcoming towards them. Many of the students, when we spoke with them, it reported not feeling welcomed on college campuses and feeling as though they were othered, and that their professors and administrators did not understand their unique challenges. And so we work with higher ed institutions to think about their best practices and how to create an environment where 25% of their population can feel a sense of belonging. Creating family-friendly spaces on campus where students can be both students and parents. We try to do that within our own offices, making it a space where moms feel comfortable and their kids have spaces to play. And we work with colleges and universities to rethink existing space and how to make it more accommodating. And then the last promising practice, which is something that we're going to be working on through the next winter, is expanding targeted supports and services and facilities to student parents off campus to advance on and off campus to advance their academic success. So this is our playbook. I'm sharing this because none of this is proprietary. And if you are interested in taking a deeper dive on how to roll out a program such as this has been a very helpful tool for us. And so when we look at this through our sort of own taxonomy, I think about how to go from engagement to enrollment. A lot of folks say they want to engage this particular population, but we also want to make sure that we are, giving them clear pathways to that 4-year degree. And so what we've known is important is that they need a sense of community. And so our focus has been on building that scholastic community that is very much rooted around academics and accountability, but it takes into account who they are as a unique scholar within that framework. So the first thing that we do, as I said, we listen to the scholar, we consult the scholar as the expert, we listen, and then we act. We don't create a program and say, hey, respond to this. We ask them what their priorities are, and we try to embed that within the program so that they see their expressions reflected there. We use asset framing language, meaning that we pair aspiration with need. I'd like to say that, I know the scholars in our program by their aspirations and by their dreams, not only their deficits, gaps, and barriers. Creating an immediate sense of accomplishment. Many times we find that parents and scholars come to the table feeling defeated. I've tried multiple times, I couldn't do it. And so we create milestones within our program so that they feel that sense of momentum and they feel rewarded for continuing and taking that next step at such a time that they are ready. We hold them in high esteem. We work with college presidents around the region to make sure that they are being intentional about recognizing and acknowledging the parents and students within their population. We've done pinning ceremonies. We've done lunch with the provost, lunch with the president, for our scholars that have a 3.0 or better so that they feel a part of that college. And then fostering connection within a supportive community. We know that the Pittsburgh Scholar House is not the greatest asset for these scholars. They are the greatest assets for one another. And so we do everything we can to connect them and to keep them, with a sense of connection and camaraderie amongst one another. And so I shared a lot of statistics about, what's the challenges that they face. But if we get this right, here's what we sort of see. There's a clear community impact here. Education increases earning potential for single mothers. Children of educated mothers perform better in school, and education improves health outcomes. And so we take a holistic social determinants of health approach when we think about how to create these supports for our parents and students. And so I spoke earlier about our flagship program that was sort of designed and developed based on the extract of data that we were able to collect in the early stages of our program design. And so 3 tenets here, we help highly motivated parents, as I said. The Wayfinders program works to support and address those parents, those needs that are common barriers to degree completion. That's childcare assistance, transportation. And what we do is when they come into the program, we sit down and we do an academic success plan. If they've had false starts and stops, we work with them to identify how are you going to prepare for that? What is your existing support system, and how can we bolster that? And if we know that they have, issues with getting a Connect card because their kid hasn't started school yet, we give them bridge transportation. We give them bridge funding to pay for childcare or to help with emergency rental assistance should those barriers emerge in discrete instances. And we also provide them with a guided pathway. We look at their goals and their aspirations, and we ask them to be feasible and practicable as to what they can handle and what they can do to be accountable. And then we hold them accountable to that plan through a blended version of encouragement, checking in, and providing incentives such as scholarships or $250 gift cards or other incentives that keep them motivated to move forward. Another pilot that nests within our Wayfinders program is a guaranteed basic income program for our high performing single parents in the program, and they get $500 per month for a guaranteed basic income for up to 1 year that they can use at their discretion in order to determine whether or not additional access to flexible cash can help to enable degree completion. And we are already seeing promising signs from that pilot. And so when you look at the Wayfinders program, it's one program with essentially 3 rungs. And the entry rung is what we call Wayfinders Prep. This is essentially for folks who have not ever had any experience going to, attending or taking college courses. We pay for their first 3 college credits so that they can understand whether or not they are ready to take on the commitment of enrolling in school. And this precludes them from taking on financial aid or a full course load that they're not starting and then stopping and compromising their ability to be eligible for aid in the future or racking up balances at an institution that will impede their progress later. Wayfinder Scholars is dedicated to those who are already enrolled in an institution of higher learning and they need additional support, whether that be scholarships, help with books, supplies, again, transportation, childcare plans, and things like that. We work with, that's where our sort of deeper level of work happens beyond the engagement level. And in early 2024, we will launch the Wayfinders Residential Fellows Program. We have site control over a 5-unit, 2-bedroom apartment building where we will move in 5 families who will serve as residential fellows for the Wayfinders program. And we will cover the cost of their housing while they are earning their degree and provide them with additional supportive services under one roof. And so again, I talked a little bit about Wayfinders Prep and how that sort of equips them to get ready to determine whether or not it's the right time to enroll in the degree program. Again, Wayfinder Scholars is for those that are actively enrolled. We teach them how to balance studies with parenting, and they must be in the Wayfinder Scholars program in order to be eligible for guaranteed basic income or other residential opportunities that have become available. And so when we look at the Wayfinders Residential Fellowship, this will be for Wayfinder scholars that are scholars of distinction, meaning they have a strong GPA, they demonstrated some level of commitment around a 2-gen level strategy for their children. And this is not meant to be transitional housing. We see it as transformational housing, meaning they may enter our doors one way, but we want them to leave in a stronger economic position upon completion of their degree program. And this is a picture of the Family Scholar House, the Louisville residence that they have there that was built in 2019 as an example of what the residential model will look like once it scales. We are starting very small because we want to learn about the best way to activate a residential strategy before taking on the commitment of a larger multi-family unit, maybe using low-income housing tax credits. And so we're going to be partnering with local social service agencies in the neighborhood to provide the supportive services that are needed in order to ensure that the families who live within this complex are fully supported to earn their degree and also foster the needs of the social emotional learning needs of their children. I spoke earlier about the importance of leadership, parent leadership, cultivation at the Pittsburgh Scholar House. These ladies here pictured are the representatives of our Parent Community Builder Committee, and they were democratically elected by the Wayfinders community of more than 200 participants right now that we have active within our community. They were democratically elected to represent the community for up to 1 year. We pay them a stipend, and in exchange, they plan our community building enrichment events. They provide, they brainstorm with us about ways to improve the program, and in the process, they earn development and leadership skills. And the goal is to have one of these members sit on the board of the Pittsburgh Scholar House so that they have a role in governing the direction of the organization. One of the sort of frail points within our programs, we weren't getting a lot of turnout for our events and activities. And so, we decided to turn that over to the community itself so that they could create activities that they would respond to. And they hosted their first event in October 2023, and it was a huge success. So these ladies are very sharp, very capable, and they have beautiful, amazing stories. And we are so thankful to have them as a part of the Pittsburgh Scholar House. So I'm going to wrap up here in a moment, but there are probably a lot of questions about, well, what can colleges, universities, and organizations do to align with this? And so in our immediate demographic, we are actively seeking institutional partners that can provide this sort of check off some of the boxes, not only check off some of the boxes, but be very thoughtful and intentional with us in co-creating and co-designing models within the institution that will attract, retain, graduate, and ensure postgraduate success for these scholars. We want intentional and active recruiting campaigns that are targeted specifically toward parenting scholars, that messaging. We've noticed so many issues around enrollment and getting access to financial aid packages. So we're asking universities to simplify this, not only for parenting students, but for all students. We need coordinated transfer pathways so that we can maximize previously earned credit. We have an amnesty enrollment program that we've implemented where we pay off an outstanding balance at an institution that is holding hostage transcripts for parenting students who have had some false starts and stops. And it's very costly. And so they, while they desire to go back to school, many of them owe a $200 balance at a community college and have to pay that balance off and have no economic means to do so. Pittsburgh Scholar House has created a benevolent fund that will pay that fee in order to get the transcript out of escrow. We want access to free credit-bearing courses. We're looking for andragogical-focused adult learning programs. Many colleges are teaching from a pedagogical standpoint, which is really geared toward younger learners. So these are adult learners, and we want programs that are reflective of that. We want co-powered scholarship opportunities. We offer scholarships. We're asking our colleges and universities to think about their resources and how can scholarships be provided to our scholars. And again, looking at the facilities, how can they be more family friendly? And thinking about how can they include this population into their residential plans? And then to be a partner with us in working with Dr. Kim McCurdy and the PA Maslow work that's happening right now to address collegiate basic needs. And so if I had to kind of boil this down for you, our blueprint has been to establish ourselves as an institution of choice for single parents that are preparing for the future of work. And we extend that sort of institution of choice to other colleges and universities. We want to provide clear pathways to postgraduate success for parenting students. We want to leverage our model to bolster enrollment and stewardship of parents and scholars. It's not enough to enroll them. If you enroll them and then you're not stewarding them, you've done them a disservice. And the whole focus of this is to increase economic mobility for this key stakeholder group, which we believe will have a broader impact on those that are adversely impacted by poverty within communities. So the thing that I like to do is I always want to end these with the voices of our scholars. This is Elena Griffin, and she is one of our PCBC members, and she shared a testimonial here, which you can read on the screen. But the thing that's resonated with me is that she talks about being a mom who's had to put her goals on the back burner for years in order to be in service to her children, while knowing that the degree is the thing that's going to really help her position her family for a brighter future. And the Pittsburgh Scholar House has been instrumental in helping her to do that. So she is now enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh and was an awardee of our enrollment amnesty. We paid off a $2,300 balance that was precluding her from finishing another 30 credits or so that she needed to finish in order to earn her degree. And then this is Brandy Lee, who is also one of our parent leaders, and she is, sharing here that she wanted to make college a priority, but she had a bad grade in her house, and she participated in a focus group and won a $250 gift card that fixed the drain issue so that she could enroll and hit the submit button on her application that day. And it warms my heart to see small investments that can have such a big impact on parents and scholars and students. And so with that, I'm going to open this up so that we can have question and answers and have a lively discussion. But I am going to ask you, if you can, to scan your screen. I've shared some reading that gives a little bit more insight than I did today about the nature and needs of parents and scholars, so that you have that at your disposal. And you will get a copy of this presentation. So if you don't catch the clip here, you can always download it later. I'm going to open it up for you to ask me anything.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I know I have questions. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand, throw it in the chat, or just go ahead and call it out. And while we're waiting for folks to get their courage up, I will ask Dr. Walker, how do students find you? How are parents selected to be a part of the program?
It's a great question. We launched our program in October 2022, and what we decided to do was we leveraged the power of social media, of course, but we had an open application to do this as a cohort model to start, and now we're transitioning to a community model. But we received more than 250 applications 175 applications in that first week, which was overwhelming because we only had the resources to accommodate about 50 parents. And then by the close of the application 3 weeks later, we had more than 250 applications. And the data tells us that we received many of those applications from a group here in Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh Brown Mamas. It's a consortium of mothers and organizations that work together for the economic improvement of Black and Brown women. And they handled our marketing and our outreach. And that's how we got such a robust response. Today, we typically do a lot of our outreach. We go directly within the community. We work with community development agencies. We work with community benefit organizations. And we also work with the Pittsburgh Council on Higher Education's consortium of colleges and universities to identify parents and scholars that are enrolled in a program and to send them to us so they can submit our application. We review that, and then we make a determination as to whether or not we're to place them in that track, whether they're Wayfinders Prep or they're going to be a Wayfinder Scholar. So we are not actively recruiting because the response was so overwhelming, but we will begin actively recruiting in January at the start of the year.
And here's a question in the chat that just came to me, I think by accident, but it's, what kinds of supports do parents get academically?
Great question. We have what's called an education navigation coordinator on staff, and what they do is at the onset of the program, they do an intake and they do an assessment that sort of identifies an academic plan, whether we are, trying to determine, are there, disability, if they're limited digital access, what are some of the barriers and impediments that are sort of going to at some point emerge within their academic journey. And we do that at the onset. And then at the other academic supports that we provide, we, through our Wayfinders program, is they are paired with an academic advisor at the institution that is aware of all of their unique needs, and they meet with them. They are responsible for meeting with them at least once quarterly. And then we do a follow up, and we can provide certain referrals and services to other community or education adjacent partnerships that can work with them to provide that academic support. As we relaunch the program and move into the residential program, that will be more intensified. They will get a dedicated family success coordinator that will do monthly academic advising with them once they're under risk. Because our program right now is decentralized and we're working with hundreds of people, but as we move into the residential phase, our direct academic advising work will begin then. But right now we rely heavily upon the navigation of academic services available within the institution.
Okay, thank you for that. Here's another question that's come up from Aiden. Is there another certain area, city like Pittsburgh that also has a large outreach to this program?
There are peer cities. I know that Cleveland again is, and I think I spoke a little bit about the Cuyahoga Community Colleges. They have a scholar house that's being built there. There are maybe 70 of these around the country. And our peer cities are Cincinnati, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Detroit. I don't think there's one in Detroit, but I know that in Ohio, they're very popular. They're very popular in Kentucky and North Carolina. And so they do a lot of robust outreach. And I will say this, to become an affiliate of the Family Scholar House, we are a nonprofit specifically focused on this population. There are other social services related or housing related entities that also become designated as scholar houses. And so their outreach and engagement approach is a little bit different than ours. We are, sort of anybody who fits the category of being a single parent interested in earning a degree is eligible for our program, but it's done a little bit differently in some other markets.
I think that's actually a good segue, because I wanted to ask you about sort of, how to go about putting something like this together in your community. But I'd like to preface that with Hillary, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about sort of some of the entrees that Philadelphia has made into this arena.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, I don't know that we've done all that much. I mean, at least if I think of it narrowly in the housing portion. But, and I might pick on Seth on the call as well from community college, because I know that the Cato Scholarship at CCP provides many of these same resources to Cato scholars writ large, who are not necessarily parenting students. But when Seth was wearing his previous two hats ago with PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Ed, I got invited to, at the time, this was 2019, the state Pennsylvania Department of Ed and Department of Human Services were trying to put together, to raise this issue and to shine light on it. And there was an attempt at, there was a planning grant to do what was called Parenting Pathways, I believe. Yes. Aspen was like a major, sort of technical assistance provider. And, we put together a proposal, and the proposal was due, I think, like March 20th of 2020. So you can imagine what happened. Unfortunately, what happened was that, the funding stream was diverted for COVID. And I don't think it's kind of ever bounced back. I think there's more interest now at PDE again and maybe CHS to sort of get more into this. So to be honest, Philly didn't necessarily continue to meet around this, but we had, Fend was interested in, putting a planning together. We sort of looked at the region geographically and had been very inspired by the Louisville model and said, maybe we could do something in, let's say, West Oak Lane that would hit LaSalle and Arcadia and CCP Northwest. And maybe there's another, housing thing that we could do in, Delaware County that was sort of, between like Cheney, Westchester, and Penn State Brandywine, right? So we were sort of thinking along those lines. I know I'd be happy to sort of reboot the conversation and think about what we could do. But it's also nice to know that it's not just about the housing piece, that there's sort of all these other sort of maybe lower lifts that we could be doing to help campuses be, better support students, in ways that they sort of already have at their disposal.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, you have an asset in the Philadelphia area through the Hope Center at Temple University with Dr. Ann Lundquist. So we've been doing some work with her. She's looking at some longitudinal studies to do with us on the residential portion of this, but they've been huge. They've been, involved in the PPLN network at the state that was looking at how to sort of, operationalize some of these recommendations. And one of the things that we've done is at the Pittsburgh Scholar House, because we are not a housing program with educational aims. We are an education program that sort of bends toward the art of housing stability. And those are two very different things. And so part of what we've done is try to work with our housing authority here to get designated as an eligible voucher provider so that our scholars can get the first right to a voucher and can have that go to any landlord that is willing to house them. So if there's not a spot available within our housing that we're developing, that voucher can be used to give them sort of scattered sites housing. And we also leverage our designation there to work with with affordable housing developers to say, set aside X number of units for parenting scholars, and we will ensure that you have the operating income on the rental side through the voucher. So those are some other strategies that we've looked at so that we're not building housing. And I know with universities, it's a little bit different because you are prohibited from participating in some of these federal programs. But if you have a nonprofit partner, for example, like a fund, you may be able to use that in order to sort of serve as a firewall for those students.
That's great. I mean, so technically we're not our own separate nonprofit, but we're part of the University of Pennsylvania, but we would be happy to partner with many other nonprofits that are on
right
the not to make it happen for sure.
But you have a lot of nonprofits in again in the community,
sure.
and that's what this Family Scholar House model can do. You can identify partners that can take on this work and serve as intermediaries within the space to improve housing access. Any other questions? No need to be shy or timid.
I have a couple more. Well, one is just a follow-up to what Hillary just said, sort of given her description of what we were starting to do and at least sort of bringing people together. I'm just wondering what advice you would have for us based on your experience about who should we make sure is at the table? What sorts of things do you wish you had done earlier, etc.?
So I will tell, Hillary touched on something really important, making sure that DHS is at the table very early. I mean, they have the lion's share of the dollars that are designed to address these socially supported needs. So our DHS when the steering committee was being formed for the Pittsburgh Scholar House in 2021, the person who was sort of driving some of this at DHS here left, and that gap has been filled. So I think that's a really important thing. You always want to make sure that you have the parenting students at the table, listening to them. Philanthropy, you want to have your foundations aware of what you're trying to do and your aims. Another thing that I recommend is making sure that the healthcare systems are involved. This is a public health issue, and I've been calling on them here in our area to do corporate social responsibility. And more than 100% of our participants are Medicaid eligible. And so we've been able to go to the Medicaid providers and say, we were asking you to make some certain investment into the holistic health needs of these particular participants. And we've been able to tether education as one of the social determinants of health and have drawn down some funding. So that's, a recommendation that I have. As far as missteps and lessons learned, I think the steering committee was formed before I came on, and it was a very strong steering committee. I think, but the gap that I will say is because this has a housing element to it, you want to make sure that you have strong public housing finance folks associated with what you're doing, because there are so many regulatory parameters around developing housing. That's been a real gap. The other thing that I will say is getting the buy-in of not only the campus president or the college president, because the college president will say yes, 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 but how do you get those administrators and CFOs and risk averse folks to buy into this model and to begin to understand the return on investment when you help these families change their lives? The last thing that I will say, one of our biggest missteps is, it doesn't seem, I've talked about it earlier, but parenting students are busy. And so you want to create these programs that engage them and involve them and do all of these things. And you spend a lot of money trying to do that. And oftentimes it's not their top priority, so they don't show up. So you want to put in the time to make sure that the services and supports that you're offering, that they are responsive to them, because that's a misstep that we had. We had developed this very elaborate, intricate sort of program model, and then folks were not responding to it, and it's simply because they were just too busy. And the feedback that we've gotten is that the only thing I really want the Scholar House to do is to help me figure out how to pay for college because it's too expensive. I mean, that's some of the feedback that we had gotten. And but our PCBC has helped to kind of shift the lens on that, because now that they see themselves as the leaders of creating and curating this community, they feel very differently about it.
Another question, what are supports for young people in the family? Are there supports for children?
Yes. So we are ramping up. So the first wave of the program has been to understand higher ed and how they, what kind of, are they prepared for these scholars and students? The second wave is to, again, starting to look at the social emotional learning needs of these children. And so we are partnering with the University of Pittsburgh's Office of Child Development. They have a research study happening called the 3 R's, which are, I think, race, relationships around racially, I can't remember what the 3 R's stand for, but it's around early learning and early literacy, and making sure that children of color see themselves represented in literature and in books. And so we've been partnering with them around that. The other thing that we do is we work with the Pittsburgh Public Schools Early Learning Program. And so we interface with their family support specialists to help our parents get their kids enrolled in their early learning programs that are available through Head Start. And so we do a big push for that. And one of the parameters that we've put in place is that if you have a child under the age of 5, you will need to have that child involved in an early learning program in order to be eligible or to have preferred status with the housing, so that we can ensure that those early learning needs are being met. We have a host of other things that are coming down the pipeline, but for right now, we've been partnering with the Office of Child Development at the University of Pittsburgh in our Pittsburgh Public Schools Early Learning Program.
Okay. And another question that we have, do you have any ideas on housing resources for fathers who are custodial parents?
Yes, so our program is is sort of agnostic. So we also work with single fathers. We just find that there are not a significant number of fathers that are going back to school and also have custody of their children. But we are when we encounter a young dad, we work with that young dad, or that dad the way we would work with a single mom. We have an initiative here in Pittsburgh called My Brother's Keeper that is funded by the Obama Foundation. So they do a lot of work in this particular space. And we also have the Homewood Children's Village, which has a fatherhood program, and we work with their fatherhood program to if there are fathers enrolled in that program that could use supportive services around the Pittsburgh Scholar House offers. Because our housing program has not yet launched and won't launch until early winter next year. So we've not done a lot of outreach around housing instability in particular, but we intend to be very thoughtful about how to also address the needs of single fathers. So if you have an MBK in Philadelphia, I think that's a great place to start.
Thank you. Another question. Are you tracking and supporting parents who have completed an associate's degree and want to pursue a bachelor's degree?
Yes, we are. So we are definitely tracking, and a significant number of parents that are in our program are enrolled at the community college, which is a 2-year degree granting institution. And so we work very closely with the Vice President of Student Affairs in their education navigation team. So we check in with them monthly to look at satisfactory academic progress. If we identify that one of our students is entering the yellow zone, we do an immediate intervention to try to get them back on track. And then when they graduate, we offer them sort of a earn your bachelor's degree, and we'll give you a scholarship to support, your first semester of enrollment, and then actively work with you to identify other opportunities. We are partnering with Carlow University, as they have consortium and affiliate agreements with two community colleges in the area, so if you are at CCAC, you are sort of automatically going to go to Carlow. So we try to have them start with the end in mind, enroll in the 2-year program, understanding that all of those credits are going to transfer to a 4-year program, or if you're in a 2-year program, make sure that 2-year program leads to one of the high priority occupations, and don't get a degree that then becomes impossible to transfer should you want to resume, or you basically earn a 2-year degree all over again in order to get the bachelor's. But there are policy fixes that are needed around that at the state level, and we're working with Dr. McCurdy, who's also on our board around those issues.
Another question: is there a career or job component to your program?
So that's a little different. So we're focusing squarely on the 2-year and 4-year degree. However, we have some participants in our program who may decide to do a workforce development training program. We have something called BankWorks here, where you go through 6 weeks of training to become a front-end person at a bank, like a bank teller. And that's a free program. And what we do to incentivize enrollment in those career training programs is, if they complete the program, we give them a $1,500 completion stipend, so that so once you complete it, you sort of have some resources in between now and your first paycheck. We found that folks that come to us aren't really interested in the career training programs. They are more likely to go directly there than to come to us. They typically come to us for the 2-year and 4-year degree. However, one of the things that we are developing right now in real time is an initiative called Ready to Prosper. And that will begin to look at what will the postgraduate success component look like around this? How do we make sure they have social capital to make sure they're getting interviews, they have mentorship and sponsorship? So that's something that will roll out once we have the residential facility activated.
Next question: can you speak more about how you support the mental health needs of scholars?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm glad this question came up, because it's another one of our lessons learned. When we launched the program, we had 4 fellows that were working with us. They were MSW students who are master's level students who were nearing end of their programs. And we had assigned each family one of these coordinators. And one of the things that came to the surface were pervasive, untreated mental health needs. And we are not a mental health provider. And so one of the things that we identified and they would be on the phone for 3 or 4 hours listening to a person's whole chronology of all the trauma they've experienced. And while we have some training around trauma response and being empathetic, that's a clinical skill set that's needed. And so one of the things that we're doing, that's why our program is sunset, because we want to be our application sunset while we, collect some of the data and figure out what needs embedded. So we are working with a UPMC, the UPMC health plan, and they have a community health worker program or initiative, and they will begin to do the mental health screening for each and every one of our participants. And they will also receive mental health support and care through the UPMC neighborhood engagement center. So we're going to outsource that component of it. But anytime any of our participants, if they're in crisis or anything like that, we have a very strong referral partnership that we can send them to mental health care providers or the Resolve network in order to get assistance. But mental health is the #1 impediment to degree completion. I mean, it's an internal thing, and it goes undertreated in this particular population. So we're bringing in the health plan who wants to deepen their ties and addressing this as a public health concern.
And UPMC?
The University of Pittsburgh Medical Center.
Okay.
And they
Awesome.
activated something called a neighborhood engagement center. And so you can go in there and get telehealth services on demand. It's on a bus line. It's a wonderful asset that we have in a centralized community.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Dr. Walker? Any other comments or suggestions or anything you'd like to share about this work from your own perspectives or in your own fields? Yeah, they are overwhelmed.
Okay, it's a lot of information. So
One of the comments is just wow, this is such a tremendous program. So
thank you, Madeline. Thank you. And so I will tell you this, because sometimes the question comes to you later in the day, or at some random time when you're cooking dinner. If you have questions or you want to continue the conversation, my link, you can go on my LinkedIn. It's essentially my name. Send me a connection, and Janine, if you're more than welcome to send my email. So if somebody wants to reach out at a later date, I'm happy to jump on a Zoom and do a virtual coffee and talk further.
That's great. Thank you. We really appreciate both the presentation and your generosity. As Dr. Walker said, everyone will get a copy of the slides. You'll also get a copy of the video that she mentioned, and I hope you had a chance to scan that information that she put up as well, but it will be on the slide, so you'll be able to get that. But we thank you very much, and we appreciate your time with us today.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure meeting and talking with all of you.
Wonderful. Hillary, any last thoughts or things you'd like to make sure folks are aware of from FEND?
No, I think the only thing I would say is that we have been thinking about this a lot recently, and our June Institute topic is going to be around 2-generation approaches. So this is our annual K-16 full day conference that I believe is going to be June 4th at Community College of Philadelphia. So mark your calendars. And perhaps we will be having Dr. Walker back in person. But, obviously not just around college going, but all ways and strategies that folks can be, supporting young people as well as their families. And, how we can sort of rethink, have that sort of 2-gen approach, that lens in our, as we provide services to folks. So that's, I think, it. And I think, we'll just give you back some time in your day. And thanks so much for participating.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. Walker.
Thank you.
Stay warm.